Well, let me put to you like this. I didn't get to where I am from my successes. I got to where I am because of my failures.
All right, 1, 2, 3, and... All right, so Short Circuit, a little spinoff of the Circuit podcast at which me, Elijah Shaw, because I'm never around, I'm going to do my own little mini podcast, and I decided that I could, since I'm doing a podcast, I could bring my friends up. And so...
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Short Circuit podcast. This is the podcast that I do because my cohorts at the Circuit magazine are all off doing stuff on their parts of the world. So I get together and I get to talk to individuals that are interested in me, that are doing work in the executive protection field. My guest today is Eric Swayze Gifford with Shadow Company. Eric's an executive protection agent as well as a CQB and firearms instructor. Welcome, Eric, to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good, brother. Good. So, you're moving around in the industry here. People are mentioning you in a very favorable light. I'm happy to have you on the show here. And I want to talk to you about, some of your background is focused on mixed martial arts, the combatives, and then also you're a firearms instructor. But what I want to do is I want to pull some of those pieces there and talk about the crossover with that and your work in executive protection. But before we get to that, every episode we do these 3 quick fire questions. You don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about them. But again, it kind of sets the stage and we get some interesting answers. So I'd be interested in hearing yours. So the first one is, what's the best thing about the industry to you?
The best thing about the industry for me is that every day is a new challenge. Every day is a new opportunity.
Sure.
Every day is a chance to grow and continue pushing forward in my craft.
I get it, bro. I get it. So now I got to flip the script a little bit here and say, I'll ask you, what's one thing in the industry you'd like to change?
One thing that I would like to change is the mindset.
Tell me what you mean.
The mindset. So a lot of people I've noticed in the industry, there's, levels to this. Some people do it for a paycheck. Some people do it as a career. Some people do it as a calling. To me, it's always been a calling. So I don't really care about the money as much as I care about being able to work my craft.
I get that.
And I think that a lot of people just take their training very lax and they forget about training their mental. Because the physical comes, but the mental is the toughest.
Got it. All right. We're going to unpack that later. So let's put a pin in that. And then the last one, and it's a little bit off base here, but follow me. So I want you to name one person, past or present, living or dead, that you would like or have liked to provide protective services to.
Bob Marley.
Bob Marley. All right. See? Okay. We've had, all over the board, of course, from, the RFKs and the JFKs to, we got Jesus Christ one. So Bob Marley is one. Okay. So one day I'm going to bring everybody back on the show, man, and we're just going to just do a deep dive into that. But thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's get into it here. So first can you just give me, just really briefly, tell me about your history with combatives. I know you spent quite a bit of time in the martial arts world, including doing MMA, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I started off in Taekwondo at 6. By 10, I went to the Junior Olympics and won 3 gold medals for point sparring. Then I moved into boxing by 12 and did that till I was about 14 when wrestling came in. And then after wrestling, I kind of messed around with some stand-up a little bit more and like Wing Chun and Kung Fu, and then moved into jiu-jitsu. And then I kind of took a break for a little bit and just not like I when I say take a break, I went from like 6 days a week on the mat to like 2, you know? So, like, then an opportunity came up and MMA fell in my lap, and my MMA coach was amazing in a lot of ways because he was able to climb into my head, and he set a challenge after the first practice that he had with me, and he said, you know, if you come every day for a year, I will make you a monster and I will not charge you. And it was one of those gyms where, you know, you drive by it every day and there's no sign or anything like that, and you walk in and it's just blood, sweat, and tears on the floor.
Okay.
You know, and so I knew that I was home.
Nice. That's a good story. Yeah. And so I know you were doing stuff in the clubs, and then you moved into where your career is now eventually, which is in executive protection. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, your time on the mat, you know, the discipline that martial arts instills in you, you know, what pieces did you take from that and move into your executive protection career?
That I thrive in chaos.
Tell me what you mean.
I have a saying that I am the order during the chaos of violent circumstance. Okay. So through all the time on the mat, through all the time, you know, from starting out in clubs at 19 years old, working security and grinding that way, like I just got to the point where things slow down when they get hectic.
Okay.
You know, and I'm able to like breathe. And it's kind of like you get to, if you train your mental, you get to a level where it's like that scene out of Sherlock Holmes where he's like, if I throw it at this angle, and then, you know, this, and that really plays out in your mind. And then at times in the cage, like, you know, things literally slowed down to the point where it was like, you know, you just saw it coming and you just slipped it and then like threw an uppercut or leg kick or shot or whatever, you know, but you were able to play that chess in your mind.
Sure.
On the move. So
what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you took that and you just applied that primarily to problem solving in your current career. Is that sound right? So it's not even so much a punch. Yeah. Maybe it is a punch sometimes, but it's an issue coming your way that other people, you know, might just be, you know, paralyzed by inaction. You're able to kind of assess that and then figure out the favorable solution. Am I getting that right?
Yes, because as most of us know, there's 3 things that, you know, win a confrontation: speed, aggression, and violence of action. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to act, right? You know, no hesitation. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that comes from learning no hesitation in your mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And training for that.
Yes, because there's been, so the way that my MMA coach, every Monday and Friday were sparring days. Okay. We always had 2-a-days. Like it didn't matter if you were on a weight cut or in a camp or anything. Everybody came for 2-a-days to do something, you know? And so basically we would start out with 5-minute rounds. Everything was championship fight for everyone. And every 5 minutes you would be in the cage and get a fresh guy. Okay. And he would pick based on who was there. And sometimes it was guys who were like, you know, heavyweights.
Right. So the mismatch was common sometimes.
Exactly. Right. And you had to thrive, you know, and we were that crew that we would rather get our ass kicked in the gym and show up at, you know, weigh-ins with black eyes and make the fight look poetic than, you know, not take it serious enough and gas out in the first round.
Sure.
You know?
And here's where the crossover makes sense to me, because, you know, there's some elements of executive protection where, for a variety of reasons, they tend to romanticize the job. And a big piece of that is because nothing has happened, you know, maybe with their particular client type and the segment of the marketplace that they're in. And they think that there isn't a physicality part of the job. You know, and what was it? Mike Tyson said that everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth.
Yep.
And my fear is, you know, if people haven't got punched in the mouth, if they don't know how they're going to respond to that stimuli, to that fight or flight, you know, how can we entrust them? How can they, you know, their cool Facebook post or their nice website say like, you know, hey, I could take care of someone else's life. Well, you know, what do you think about that?
Right. So I can pretty much read who's the guy that's going to handle business and who's the guy that's not going to handle business. From being in the industry long enough.
Gotcha.
You know, and it's all based on how far you're willing to take it personally. Like to me, like if I'm being instilled to protect someone's life, like I take that, like I'm going to take a bullet if necessary. You know, like I'm good with that. You know what I mean? So my training and my continued training, like continues to allow me to keep that mindset. And, you know, you can do pretty amazing things under pressure that you never thought you could do because your training kicks in.
Right. I get that. You know, I like to use the term controlled aggression.
Yes.
So, you know, you have that tiger in the cage and all you gotta do is just pop the lock and it comes out. But the majority of the time you can keep that internalized because you don't want to show everyone all the time. And, but you need that spirit.
Yes. So, you know, I'm to the point with my training and confidence in my skill set that it messes with my mind when I have to go hands on because like, it's just, you know, highly trained versus highly untrained.
Right.
So if I'm, you know, working a client and some, you know, drunk guy who's trying to get, you know, a photo and I'm fencing him off and he's like, oh, you touch me again, I'll knock you out. I'm like, okay, yeah, I got you. You know, just keep moving. Okay.
Sure.
And then if they don't listen after that, then you know how to strike to the point where they don't even see it coming. You know, but it's not, I didn't take this job to hurt people. I took this, you know, career to protect people. And it's not just protecting the principle, it's also protecting the image, the brand.
Absolutely.
You know,
right.
So on and so forth. And I think a lot of guys don't understand that. You know, I think that the temperament of some agents are very unnecessarily aggressive. You know, de-escalation, verbal judo. You know, like I like to play Jedi mind tricks. Like if somebody, you know, comes at me and they're real argumentative, I'll be like, oh man, those shoes, where'd you get those kicks, man? And they're like, oh yeah, you like those? Oh yeah, man, got them on sale down here. You know, so to me, you know, I want everybody to be safe.
Sure.
Like I don't want to let that snake out of the cage, especially if it's a firearm. You know, so I try to see what's coming as best as I can before it happens by reading people's behavior.
And let's talk about that for a second, because you brought up the firearm, and I know you're a tactical firearms instructor. So you're working with students, and and maybe there's a degree of those they're doing it for personal protection, but there might be a degree that are just training because they're in this field or have aspirations to be in this field or related field.
Right.
So there's obviously the proficiency with the firearm, but again, we keep coming back to that same term. The mindset is the important piece, right? And so what are you telling them, or what are you talking to them, about in terms of mindset, how they should be thinking about this if they're going to be in a career where they're carrying a firearm?
So my mindset when, this comes up is, or my philosophy when this comes up is, I want to be better with my hands and, ground game and stuff than I do my firearm, because my firearm is always my last resort. Now, I've trained both for a very long time. So I know that I'm proficient in both of them. But what happens when you can't bring a weapon in,
Sure,
and you got no stand up, you got no ground game, you got no cardio, and you just don't know those vital areas to end it.
right.
When I first started, I got passed over a lot because I wasn't big enough. Right. So then I had to go hands-on with a guy who was like twice my size.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very different with a firearm because you're trying to create that distance, right?
Sure.
So in a hand-to-hand situation against a bigger opponent, I try to get in and I dig into the liver. I dig into the kidney. I break you down, and then I just, finish you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to be able to understand that when you do this job, you potentially have to take on any type of threat in any type of way, whether it's verbal, physical, or, in a firefight.
So what I'm hearing here is you're saying that the firearm is just one tool in an arsenal. Mm-hmm. It's just one tool, and maybe an issue is that some of us have is that we focus on that as the primary, and particularly when we're talking about executive protection, we're talking about domestically United States, that opens up a world of liability issues if that's, if that's your only tool.
Exactly. And I mean, I just don't think that, I think that because of the gaining like popularity from the Ryan Reynolds executive protection movie, that people think that anybody can do this. Mm-hmm. And it's not, in a lot of ways, it's more of how good are you on your feet? How quick can you think? How quick can you find an exit? How quick can you size up a situation before it happens, as you see like people coming, okay, like what's up with these people? Like, let me read their behavior real quick. Okay, we're cool. Or all right, I better get my client over here, but it's just, it's a lifestyle in a sense. You have to be willing to grind in every way to try to reach those new, beginnings or, steps in your career. And it comes with a lot of I can type of thinking. I can do this, like, but you also have to put yourself in those situations too. Right. And I mean, I'm from the country and we scrapped a lot as kids.
Okay.
And so, from just like a lot of youngsters, grow up that way. And, you learn. Let me put to you like this. I didn't get to where I am from my successes. I got to where I am because of my failures.
Sure.
And
those were the lessons.
Yes. And because I accepted those failures before they happened, that I would be able to mentally push through and make it better no matter what. And I would never, give up.
I'm with that. I like to say with the environment I came from, I'm not fearless. I respect fear. I saw the ramifications for actions so much that I understood cause and effect at a very early age. And I think that is what, throughout my career, I was able to read the room. If this happens, I know why this happens. If this doesn't happen, I can influence that. And so being able to do that, even innately, because it's a survival skill early on, but later you're able to say, okay, this is how I can be more effective to, my team and my client. So I get what you said. Now, exactly. You talked about the grind part, and I know, some of these skills are perishable, and so we have to train, we have to stay on top of it. But the more we advance up that ladder, and you're working and you're touring. I think you might be on the tour right now. How do you find time to train and to continue to stay proficient?
So, my hotel room becomes my dojo.
Yeah, I know that one.
A lot of, especially like if you go to, my Instagram, like, it's like a physical resume for me. Like, I'm about this life, so I live this life.
Sure.
If I have if I have 3 hours before a show,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do 100 mag changes to make sure that, you know, they're always on point, and I won't stop until I get them. And even if it has to take like that whole time, you know, and I get 10 minutes to get ready, like I want to be, when I step out with a client, I want to be as sharp as a katana,
Got it.
you know, both mentally and physically.
So you're practicing what you preach. I'm listening.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I grew up also watching Bruce Lee movies like over and over again. And, you know, my mom used to get so annoyed because every Friday, remember when we were kids, when you go to the video store and, you know, mom would be like, oh, it's Dollar Friday night. You can pick out 3 movies. It would be like Kung Fu. It would be a Bruce Lee movie and like Bloodsport, you know?
She's like, wonderful, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I got into martial arts at a very young age, you know, because like I saw that in front of me, and I knew that I was meant to do something like that, you know, and because I was at such a young age, I didn't know, and I just wanted to keep going. I loved the self-discipline that it taught me.
Gotcha.
You know?
And then to your point, you carried on that ethos, and then you just have to figure out how to incorporate that into your daily life, even when you're working. Gotcha.
Exactly. And so, you know, when I get that time in the hotel, when like, you know, and I mean, I've worked with a lot of agents over the years, and, you know, everybody has their way of decompressing for a little bit before, you know, a show or after a show. But I literally just start doing like push-ups, and then put my feet on the chair and roll the chair to my, you know, chest to work my abs, or, you know, mag changes, or cornering, or shadow boxing, sprawls, you know, all that, you know.
Is that where the name Swayze came from, the call sign?
So quick little story. I was about 20 years old, and I was working at this nasty, disgusting strip club, but it was called Thoroughbreds in Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown. And so I was so hell-bent on doing a good job that when the manager told me that no men are allowed to touch the ladies, I would walk by the VIP booth, and I would literally like grab dudes who are like adult men like us now, you know, and be like, hey, don't touch the girls, you know. And then the female would be like, you know, oh my God, like, you're messing up my money.
Right.
So then one night, you know, a couple guys like pick me to like, you know, pick a fight with in, you know, the club, because we're trying to get them out. And, you know, they're like, oh, come on, little boy, let's go outside. I'll whoop your ass, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Keep in mind, they can barely stand or even talk. Sure. And so I'm like, okay, you want to fight? Yeah, let's go outside. You know, I'll follow you. And so as we're like egressing towards the door, they get outside and kind of stumble down the steps, and I'm standing at the top of the steps, and I hear everybody like come behind me. I'm just like, bye-bye. and then turn around and walk back in, and it's like that was one of the scenes out of Roadhouse, right? Which I also broke that VHS tape when I was a kid too.
these were your models early on in life, huh, in terms of shaping you.
Exactly. I mean, I didn't have my father left early, and then my mom remarried, and like he was, you know, always working, so. I had my grandfather who, you know, had a big hand in raising me, and I just saw the way that he was as a strong, you know, male. Sure. And like, I didn't have, you know, posters of like Rambo or, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like on my wall. I had like Bruce Lee. I had, you know, a Roadhouse poster. Like I had like guys that were all around put together. Got
what you're saying. Right. Sure. So they weren't superhuman. They were humans that were at the peak of what they were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that.
Exactly. And I wanted a part of that. I wanted to figure out how I could get to that level.
Got And I got one last question for you before we wrap up. And
Sure.
it's slightly off topic here, but I think it kind of plays into the fact that we've kind of come back a few times to this recurring motif of mindset. So, I know you work in the spend time working in the entertainment sector. Like I mentioned, I think you're on a tour right now, but I seems like you work with some diverse different types of clients. And let's say if we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about different genres of music. Do you have what do you attribute your ability to be able to move back and forth in these different circles or these different genres? Whereas I find that some protectors kind of get stuck. This is the type of protection I do, or this is the type of clients I service, and I can only service this type of client. So what gives you that versatility, or do you even notice that as a difference?
I don't really notice it, because to me, it's a mental checklist that I go through. Like, I don't care. Mm-hmm. So when I was talking about I'm more than willing to take a bullet for my client. Mm-hmm. I don't care who that client is. I don't care about their demographic, their background. Mm-hmm. If you look to me to protect you, mm-hmm. I'm gonna do it in my way, the same way, all the time.
I'm tracking.
To me, there's no SOP. There's no standard operating procedure on this. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I just love protecting.
Got it.
I love grinding, and,
mm-hmm.
Networking. And so the more that you network and the more that your goal mentally should be that every time you step out, no matter what type of detail it is, mm-hmm. that you learn something from it, and that you get someone to notice how you move. Yeah. Because you'll never know when you may meet that person again, or they may come up to you at another venue and be like, "Hey, weren't you with so-and-so? Mm-hmm. Oh, now you're with them? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Right.
You have a vast variety, man. That's awesome."
Sure.
And I've just been very blessed that I also understand mentally that if somebody gives me an opportunity, mm-hmm. I'm going to do everything that I can to not make that person look bad. Mm. And to make sure that, I do it just as well for myself, but more so for them, because they gave me that opportunity.
It's a great philosophy. Yeah. Well, Eric, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with us. I think our listeners probably got something out of it. I know I did. And I'd love to have you back on the show one day.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.